Call to order the Concord City Council meeting of Monday, February 10th, 2025. Would you all please stand with me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councillor Brown. Here. Mayor Champlin.
Here.
Councillor Fennessy.
Present.
Councillor Foote.
Present.
Councillor Grady Sexton. Here. Councillor Horn. Present. Councillor Keach.
Here.
Councillor Credit.
Here.
Councillor Kurtz.
Present.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Here.
Councillor McNamara.
Present.
Councillor Schlosser.
Here.
Councillor Schultz.
I believe Councilor Schultz is going to be late.
Councillor Sekou.
Councilor Sekou is excused.
And Councillor Todd.
Here.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 13th, 2025.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, sir. I believe at the councilor's comments at the end, I mentioned Doug Finney. Could have been my Concord accent, but his name is F-I-N-N-E-Y, not F-E-E-N-Y.
Got it.
Thank you.
Counselor, could you move your microphone a little closer to you?
Sure.
Thank you.
That must have been the problem.
Very well. Thank you. By the way, I did forget to announce at the very start, I'm sorry. Any other comments on the minutes? All right, all those in favor of adopting the minutes as presented and corrected, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Ayes have it. I did forget to mention that we do have devices available in the room for those who have difficulty with hearing. They're transmitter and headphones, and they are available from the Concord TV booth in the back of the room. And Mike is back there waving so that you know where he is. Thank you very much. Let me see. Mr. City Manager, I believe we have a presentation on the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant.
We do. Your Honor, Mr. Chesley, Mr. Driscoll, and his team.
Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. Just by way of introduction, the gentleman to my left is Dan Driscoll. For those who haven't met him, he's our wastewater superintendent, and he operates, manages, and maintains both the city wastewater plants and 9 remote plants. Downstream of Concord, there are about 500,000 people that use the Merrimack River. But in my view, more importantly, there's a large brewery that uses the Merrimack River for its product. And those of you who watched the Super Bowl and enjoyed one of their products, there's an outside chance that a drop of that can may have passed through Dan's plant. And Dan takes his work very seriously. To my right is Mike Terrio from Wright Pierce. He's a senior project manager. And we're here tonight to discuss some necessary upgrades that are needed at the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant. And Mike's going to give much of the presentation. And there are really, I think, 3 slides that I think are important. And one of the first slides he's going to share with you is the large housing boom that Concord is going to be experiencing. I think Deputy City Manager Matt Waltz briefed you on that this October. And I think when you think about that housing boom, it's significant. When you think of the population, there are communities that abut Concord that have populations less than we're contemplating. And it took those communities well over 300 years to get to that point. And we're looking at doing this in a relatively short term. So that's significant. The second thing, Mike's going to give you a little lecture on wastewater treatment plant 101. And there's really 2 things. He's got a clever slide that folks like him look at and folks like him operate. There is wastewater treatment plants need to pass a certain volume of liquid And that's something we can all conceive. All of us can picture what a gallon is. We have an understanding. But most importantly, what wastewater treatment plants do is they consume the organic matter in that wastewater that we all deposit regularly and we collect and treat. And it's important to treat that loading because that loading, if it were to pass into the Merrimack River, it would environmentally kill it. So we have basically a large biological reactor which is digesting that organic loading. So there's two levers that you need to look at your dashboard. One is, do I have sufficient volume to pass this liquid? And otherwise, do I have sufficient capacity to digest the waste that's in that liquid? And we're approaching a point where we are dwindling capacity. We have an issue. And the third thing he's going to talk about is how to address it. And if you think of a process, a wastewater process, it's pretty linear. And we talk about primary treatment, and we talk about secondary treatment. And our shortfall is in the secondary treatment portion of our wastewater treatment stream. And this is where the plant is digesting, for the most part, soluble organic loading. And historically, when the plant was built back in the 80s, we relied on a technology, locally we call it a biotower, and which would digest some of that waste, and then the remaining of the liquid stream would be digested in an aeration system. What the folks in Concord learned in the 80s about biotowers, while they are extremely effective to digest waste, they're also extremely effective in producing odors. And some of the senior members on this council may remember spending roughly $4 million to capture the odors that were leaving our plant. And I think what Mike will share with you, well, again, this was a good technology at the time. It's not one that our neighbors really appreciate, so what we're looking at is moving towards more aeration. Presently, one of our biotowers is showing some significant decay, and that's also causing a precipitous issue as far as our operations at the wastewater treatment plant, which will only be compounded by the housing boom that we're facing. So without much more further ado, I'm going to turn over the nuts and bolts to Mike. And at the end of the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. They're really no dumb questions, and we'll try not to have any dumb answers.
Thank you, Chip. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
So, Wright Pierce has been working with the city of Concord for the last year and a half on this project. We've also been assisting the wastewater department on projects over the course of the last 10 years. Just a few topics, a summary of topics that we're going to talk about. That was a great introduction by Chip, so I won't spend much time on it. For those that may not be familiar, the Hall Street plant takes about 75% of the flow from the city of Concord, primarily in the downtown system and portions of Bow. Flow comes into the plant for preliminary treatment. This removes rags and debris from the wastewater. It also removes sand particles as well. Large solids are removed in one of two primary clarifiers before flow enters the first phase of biological treatment in the biotowers, as Chip had mentioned. After the biotowers, flow goes through aeration tanks. This is a conventional type of wastewater treatment process. And that process creates fine suspended solids through the treatment. And so flow is allowed to settle out in one of a series of clarifiers before being disinfected and then ultimately discharged to the Merrimack River. Today, in the focus of the topic, as Chip had mentioned, we're going to be talking about the secondary treatment system. Secondary treatment system, this is the biological system. This is the system that will remove that organic matter from the wastewater and also remove ammonia from the wastewater before it's ultimately discharged to the Merrimack River. Some 20 or 30 years ago, there was a problem in one of the biotowers, the southern biotower, where even the media is offline and collapsed inside. That biotower has been out of service at that time. The remaining biotower that is online is not operating at optimum capacity. It's less than 50%. So certainly any future endeavor using the biotowers would require restructuring or rebuilding of them. Chip talked about two primary components of a wastewater plant that define its capacity. The tanks, the pumps, the pipes need to be sized properly to handle the flow. Hall Street's at about 35% of its original design capacity, meaning there's plenty of life left in the tank for added flow. On the loading side, however, it's not the same story. With that biotower out of service, in the remaining biotower that is in service, it's dealt a significant impact to the available capacity at Hull Street. Through the great service of General Services, and Marco and the Water Department, there's been a lot of education to the public about water conservation. What this means is that through the course of time, the waste stream coming into Hall Street is about 2 times the strength of what was originally intended when this treatment plant was designed and constructed in the 70s and 80s. These things combined mean that the Hall Street plant is nearing the end of its loading capacity. On top of that, significant developments are either in the works already or maybe upcoming. Many of you may have sat in the City Council presentation from October that outlines many of these developments. These could be the big push being for housing. This could be new housing at the end of a new sewer extension or redevelopment of an existing commercial lot, for example, or a mixed-use lot. Many a times those lots or the commercial business may have been a light duty or a dry business, now being replaced with housing units, which add a considerable amount more of flow into the system. So throughout numerous collaboration workshops with the city, we tried to look at several alternatives. What could be done with the existing plant? What could be done if the biotowers were returned to their original capacity and the plant returned to its original capacity? We knew one biotower was offline and the other one needs to be rebuilt because it's at half capacity. If we retain the use of the biotowers, we know odor control is a very important part of Concord's solution if that was to be involved. But the simple fact is rebuilding the biotowers alone does not buy the city enough capacity. It doesn't buy the city enough capacity now. It doesn't buy the city enough capacity in the future with the developments. So additional aeration tankage would be needed. It doesn't make economical sense to do major capital upgrades to the plant in 2 different locations, meaning at the biotowers and at the aeration tankage. So the most cost-effective way to address the loading need would be to add a series of new aeration tanks on the south side of the existing ones. This could be done in a way so that existing flows could be maintained for treatment during the construction of new supplemental facilities. To add support to those new aeration tanks, a new building would be needed that would house electrical gear and new aeration blowers for the aeration tanks. The rest of the work is consists of yard piping and upgrades to another outbuilding for some pumping capacity. Oh, oops. Overall, these recommendations sum up to approximately $30 million. The bulk of that cost is excavation, concrete, and piping. It's not a whole new treatment plant, it's just a new process at the treatment plant. With the current vulnerability of material prices and construction labor costs, there's a chance that it could be a little bit more than 30 million. The city general services has been doing a very thorough job of talking to some of the city's largest contributors and dischargers into the collection system, dischargers that are sending higher amounts of load of organic matter than they should be, making sure that the permits are in place and pre-treatment is going to occur. So this presents opportunities for potential cost savings if the loading coming into the plant is lighter. Maybe the tanks are a little bit smaller, but it doesn't avoid the need for an overall upgrade. In terms of a timeline, this is about a 5-year process between design and construction. What's interesting to note is that in about 2 years, the discharge permit for that treatment facility will expire. And so this is an opportune time for the city to begin this process of planning ahead of that happening, so that a more rigid schedule isn't imposed upon the city by either New Hampshire DES or the EPA. The treatment plant's always open for tours. Dan, Wright Pierce, we're here to help educate you as questions arise. If you want to know more about the process or get more into the nuts and bolts of it. And if, as always, if you have any additional questions after today's meeting, please just forward them to Chip and we'll be happy to take a look at them together.
Any questions for the team? Council Brown.
Yes, could you just go back, you said there are some businesses that are submitting more material than they should, that's currently happening?
I just mean it's a stronger load, a stronger amount of load into the system. Yes.
That is happening right now. There are some businesses that are submitting more than, now you're saying then they should be, meaning than what they've been charged for? What do you mean that by that, when you say then they should be? Then what we have the capacity, like the piping to handle?
No, it's more to deal with the strength of the waste.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? We have competition in the back here.
I'm sorry. So it has to deal with the strength of the waste, to bring their strength down to something that's more comparable to what you and I would generate, to balance it, that's all.
And there are pre-treatment guidelines that the city will be using just to make sure it's at the discharge is to a reasonable amount.
Follow up, Your Honor.
Follow up.
Can you explain some of those pre-treatment? What is the pre-treatment that would be required?
So wastewater treatment plants are designed, from a very broad sense, wastewater treatment plants are designed to deal with residential demands. And so industry's waste is different than what you and I may generate.
Okay.
Wastewater treatment plants are biological processes. For instance, trying to think of an industry that we may not have in Concord, like a plating industry may use heavy metals. Well, if you think of heavy metals are toxic to a biological process, so you'd want that industry to remove the heavy metals before they discharge it into the publicly owned wastewater treatment system.
And that would happen at their end.
And that would happen at their end. And that's what the term pre-treatment
Okay.
discusses. It's to
Thank you.
it's to take those constituents out of the waste stream before it mixes with everything else.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. My question is specific to the number of state properties that we have in Concord and their use. So the prison, the LOB, the State House, all of the state agencies. Is the state contributing any funding to the waste that they produce?
They contribute through their user fees because the user fee captures the capital cost. So they pay for their share as the rest of us, and they pay for it that way. Do they pay a fee in addition to that? No, they don't.
I think that was my question, but thank you. Yep.
Councilor Todd.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very informative. Appreciate it. I think as a follow-up to Councilor Grady Sexton's question, and I don't know who would be appropriate to answer this, maybe the city manager, but there might be members of the public out there who are watching who are wondering how we would go about funding this $30 million approximate
How would you go
charge.
about funding it?
Yeah, yes.
This would be something you'd build into the capital. The reason they're here tonight is to give you a preliminary information on the capital budget. We're talking the capital budget, and then when you look at the capital budget, you build it into your pro forma, and that's what drives the rates. So back to Councilor Grady Sexton's comment. So if you needed to do these improvements, which you do, then it would be reflected in the rates. So the people who actually use the capacity, the more the state uses, the more the prison uses it, the more State House uses it, the more they're going to pay. The less you use, the less you pay. Thank you.
It's like a liquid purple bag.
Oh, boy.
Thank you. And thank you very much for the presentation. You mentioned that, as I understood it, one of the bio towers is not operational at all, and the other one's operating at, I think you said about 50% capacity.
Slightly less than 50.
Okay. And then I follow up. As I understood your presentation, the concern was about increased capacity that we're going to have with respect to housing and how that potentially impacts the ability of the plant to function in the future. And my question is, if we do nothing, at what point do we run out of the loading capacity, which I understand is the real issue here?
The city is out now, or very near being out.
If I could, so the idea being that because the usage by some businesses, which created the additional biological demand here, what you'd want to be able to do is taper that back, at the same time increase capacity to be able to handle that. So you need to make the investment, or what you could do is you could simply say, this is why in some communities you see communities saying, we're not allowing any more certificates of occupancy for housing. That's what you see in many communities around the state saying, we do not have the capacity at our plant, usually it's the wastewater plant, to be able to handle that. And then you would just say, no more housing, is what you'd say. Which you're not in that situation. I think Michael put it correctly, which is the issue is between many years ago, the city council invested in the combined sewer overflow project. So you don't have like many communities like a Portsmouth or Manchester or almost every other city has a tremendous amount of rainwater that enters their system, which reduces the BOD, which reduces the concentration, and then the plant handles it. But of course, they don't receive any revenue for all the rainwater that goes through there. So you have that combined with the lack of capacity in the biotowers, and the reason you have the lack of capacity in the biotowers is because you haven't needed to make those improvements because you haven't had that demand. Now, as you get all this tremendous amount of housing that's coming along at the same time, and give you an example, something like, say, the Steeplegate Mall, going from a retail use that has very little BOD creation other than maybe the food court, right? And maybe a few of the bathrooms to commercial and 600 plus units of residential housing is what they're talking about. And whether it's them or some other project that comes along like that, that is going to create a whole bunch of demand all at once or very quickly over 3 or 4 years. That's going to put a demand on that plant. So that's why you get out in front of it now. As Michael said, you get in front of it now. In 5 years, you'd be at the right time to go and everything could go smoothly. If you simply say, we don't want to invest in this and we're just going to call it a day, then you just tell the community this, and essentially we're getting about as big as we're going to be.
Follow up.
Thank you. So I guess I'm trying to understand, and maybe this has to do with the fact that we're basically operating our biotowers at, I'll call, a quarter of what they were designed. But in the presentation, you sort of laid out that our capacity for load is very different than the flow. And I'm trying to understand why those are so different. Is it simply just because of the fact that we're operating at like 25% of design for the biotowers?
One thing, as we were talking about this early on, as I said earlier, everyone can relate to a volume. Everyone has an understanding what a gallon is. And over here quietly, there was a discussion of what is BOD when Tom raised the issue. And BOD is a measure of organic strength. It's a measure of how much oxygen it takes to reduce that organic strength down to a level that a stream can deal with. If we take Concord, and my simple elevator speech is this. Back in the 80s, folks in this chamber thought they were buying a 10 million gallon a day plant. And then, as Mike had talked about, through water conservation, we've increased the strength of that waste stream, that input. So generally speaking, and don't hold me to the precision of the numbers, but 10 million gallons a day in 1980 is probably about 8 million gallons a day now. Just roughly. This will never pass O&B. And if you remember, we have 2 biotowers. One of the biotowers hasn't been operational for well over 30 years. And as I said, the waste stream has to pass in a linear fashion through that. So 8 drops down to 4, very simplistically, because we're down to 1 biotower, and that 1 remaining biotower is sputtering. And the 3 of us will debate, is it 50%? Is it 45%? Is it 60%? I don't want to invite you to that meeting because it's real boring. But it isn't operating as it should. And, you know, we've been running the plant at 3.5 to 3.7 million gallons a day. So we are right on the cusp of fully optimizing the plant. There isn't much room. And then, as a community, we've got this plug of housing that's coming at us. And as Mike said, from a land use standpoint, in many instances, we're taking areas that may have been commercial, which generates less gallons per acre than multifamily, which generates more gallons per acre. So we have these compounding challenges that are facing us, which drives the need, if we want to stay on our current path, to make the $30 million investment to meet the needs of the residential demand and to meet the community's needs. And the part that I walk away from is that slide that says we're adding about 5,000 people. That's Loudon. We're building Loudon inside the city of Concord in the next several years. And it took how many years for Loudon to get to 5,500 people, plus or minus? And again, don't hold me to the precision of the exact population of Loudon, but it's in that neighborhood. These are significant numbers.
Mr. Spell.
I think one of the questions that is inherent here is that the cost, when the plant was originally built, there's a lot of free federal money that went into that plant. You would, faced with that cost now and the lack of federal money, you would not build a 10 million gallon plant to handle the city of Concord, unless you're building a plant for the next 100 years. It's just too large. So to keep it operating at a 10 million gallon capacity would be very, very costly. So what we've done over the years, the last 30 years, is actually build and maintain what you really need to build and maintain to manage what the demand that's there in place. And now you're coming to that question that the city came to back in the 80s, which is how big do you want this plant to be in terms of how much of improvements you want to make and how much you want to pay for it. So that's what. So at that time, the city said, a lot of federal money. Let's build the biggest plant we can, and away we go. And even though we know we wouldn't need that big of a plant for 50 years, and we still don't need it. So you got to get out in front of it. Michael's trying to get us out in front of it with his work, and that's where we are right now.
Well, you answered one of my questions, which was, would any federal funds be available? I think the answer is no. Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, first of all, I think an investment like this is critically important to our economic development going forward. So this is money well spent, in my opinion. But my, excuse me, my main question goes to what the manager just mentioned, and that's future capacity. Now, you've built in these 5,000 people, but I guess this is a question for Wright Pierce. How much have you anticipated beyond that? What's the capacity this will handle beyond that?
There was an allowance for additional capacity, not only to handle the current loading and the assumed developments with the information that was known at the time, but then some additional allowance beyond that. And I forget if that might have been 10 or 20% beyond that.
Right. That was my question. Thank you.
Councilor Krenovic?
That was my question.
You take it up with him afterwards.
I will.
Councilor Brown?
Yes, this is actually for the city manager. Are we levying impact fees for this, for residential and commercial?
No.
Could we?
No. Oh, could you?
Yeah.
Depends on how you want to do it. If you got to remember, if you use impact fees, whether it's residential or commercial, that is simply passed on to the new user, the buyer. So that will increase housing costs and it will increase commercial building costs. So what the council has said in the past is we had fees for things like, I'll give you an example, schools. You had impact fees for schools for Merrimack Valley and for Concord. After those capital projects were built out for both of those groups, you eliminated the impact fees for both of those, and so because you couldn't collect them anymore because there was no new capacity created. In this case, I think you'd have to create additional capacity beyond what you already have to be able to. That's the whole idea of impact fees, right? You're getting ready for the future. So you'd have to make the argument that whatever you're collecting impact fees is used to increase that new capacity. You can't use it for repairs. Right. You can only use it for new capacity.
Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you, and this is probably directed to the city manager and maybe to you as well. If this was designed for 10 million gallons, it seems to me we're not really increasing capacity.
Right.
We'd be, I guess, increasing what we're currently doing, but we're not actually increasing the overall capacity of the system.
Good. So you'll remember 3 or 4 years ago, Marco Philippon was in asking for $4 million to redo the pump station at the water treatment plant. And that is a 10 million, that can process 10 million gallons, but it could only pump out on a really good day and everything going well, 7.5 million gallons. So with that $4 million new pumping station, it can now match the 10 million. You have not increased the capacity of the plant. You've increased the capacity for that water to be pumped out to the water towers and provided to the public. So capacity is the same. The $4 million, you could not collect an impact fee. Now, that $4 million that went into that plant, that goes into the rate calculations that you make, and when you charge for water usage, you collect those dollars back from that, and that helps pay those bonds for those costs.
Follow up and then Councilor Keach.
Yeah, follow up. So you had mentioned that we weren't necessarily designing for the 10 million with the proposed new aeration tanks. What are we designing for, or are we designing for 10 million?
We're designing for our understanding of our immediate needs from a housing standpoint, take kind of I'm going to say a 15-year look at what it may be, and the additional capacity that Mike had mentioned. And basically, we're looking at loading issues right now, and we're trying to meet that demand.
Thank you, Honor. And this is for the city manager. I just want to be clear. I think I understand the legality of it, but impact fees are limited to increasing actual capacity. You can't just levy an impact fee.
Because you need money.
You need money to subsidize the tax base?
That's correct.
Is that right? That's correct. Thank you.
Councilor Foot.
Thank you, Your Honor. So just so I understand this, so at one point, we're talking about not increasing the capacity, and I understand what the plant was designed for previously, but if the plant never has run at that capacity, and we're here tonight talking about increasing the capacity to accommodate a new Loudon, then I would take it as we are increasing the capacity of the plant to accommodate future use, and I don't understand why an assessment couldn't be levied on new construction as part of that. I think this is a great leeway into talking about impact fees and assessment fees, so we can ensure that the folks that are coming and that want to be part of this committee are contributing their fair share, and we're not passing that burden on to the existing ratepayers. So that's a common theme of mine, and hopefully at some point it gains traction. So.
This is city manager.
It's certainly something we could look at. I'd be glad to, as part of that financing. But I'll tell you, the expert, there's only really one true expert in the state of New Hampshire, that man right there, on impact fees. So he's the best. He's the smartest person in the state on impact fees. Guarantee it. So we can take a look at that. If we can figure a way to do it in a minute. But it's a policy decision you'll have to make about, because what you're doing is you're increasing the cost, again, of residential units. So whatever, if that's okay, that's okay. And also commercial usage. That's how it works. So it's a value decision you have to make, but we can certainly take a look and see how legal it is.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chesley, since you're here, and since people at home may not realize that we've had snow-moving equipment right outside the window here, I wanted to ask you, how are your crews doing?
Candidly, they're tired, but they're doing well. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. I don't think, some of us receive emails from people about sidewalks that aren't cleared and things of that nature, and I don't think folks realize that this is the most snow that has hung around that we've had probably in 4 years, maybe 5 years that
Yes.
I remember. And I had to tell a clerk at a store this weekend that this is what winters used to be like when I moved here 40 years ago.
Absolutely.
And I don't think people understand that, if I understand it correctly, that the people who drive the snow plows all night are the people who in the morning are driving the sidewalk plows.
Right.
And sometimes you need to actually have a night's sleep or a few hours sleep.
Yeah.
So
We encourage that.
yeah. So would you please extend to your crews the appreciation of the council for the work that they're doing and the hours that they're putting in. I know it's not easy, notwithstanding the fact that we have added some bonuses to help kind of make that a little easier, but they still need sleep. They still need to spend time with their families. And when we have this much snow, and we're having more snow coming up this week, at least a couple of storms, I know that it becomes difficult for them. So please thank them on our behalf.
Do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All clear?
You're all clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
All right. May I have a motion to adopt the consented agenda?
So moved.
Moved?
Yep.
Second.
Seconded. Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
There are 4 items pulled.
Yes, there are 4 items that have been removed from the consent calendar by Councilor Brown. Items 15, 17, 23, and 33. Are we ready for the motion? All those in favor of adopting the consent calendar as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it, the consent calendar is adopted. This moves us to the public hearing portion of our meeting. Madam City Clerk.
Hope you
Item
can hear
35A.
me. Yes, it's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title V, Administrative Code, Chapter 35, Classification and Compensation Plan for the wastewater maintenance manager.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager.
Your Honor, members of the council, the wastewater maintenance manager position will be a new position added to Schedule D. And is noted that while the water maintenance supervisor position is not being eliminated, it will remain vacant and unfilled. And then, of course, fill the manager position. The city's current wastewater maintenance supervisor has, over time, gained necessary qualifications to fill the maintenance manager position, and essentially we'd be moving that person into this position.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Hearing none, I'll open the public hearing on item 35A. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing on item 35A closed. Madam City Clerk, item 35B.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $35,000 for reimbursement of demolition costs associated with the Next Step Living, Inc. project at 3 North State Street and accepting the sum of $35,000 in grant proceeds from the New Hampshire Department of Business and Economic Affairs Municipal Demolition Grant Program for this purpose.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager.
And members of the council, this is a project that we're doing with Next Step Living, Inc., which is a local organization that plans to develop a congregate living facility at 3 North State Street to support 12 adult individuals with developmental disabilities. Because the programmatic requirements of the Municipal Demolition Grant Program stipulate that the funds be paid as reimbursements for documented demolition costs already expended, the city manager, myself, and the Community Development Department will coordinate said reimbursements through Next Step Living, Inc. and the BEA. This is just another example of the city working to actively support the development of housing in our community and why the city was one of 18 municipalities recently designated as a housing champion by the state of New Hampshire. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? I have one. Just for clarification, this is $35,000 for internal demolition, Mr. City Manager. The structure itself will remain?
It is a grant for internal demolition, correct.
Thank you. All right. I will now open this for a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on item 35B? Please come forward. Welcome. Please identify yourself for the city clerk.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lisa Bodwin. I live in Ward 4. I'm taking a moment to relook at the front page of the website for Next Step Living. The front of the website includes I'm sorry, I'm a little taken aback. I wasn't planning on testifying. My subject matter expertise is disability policy, and full inclusion and participation for people with disabilities is not only my professional wheelhouse, I'm a parent. So this is a very important subject to me. The liberation of people with disabilities is really important. We still have not fully included people with disabilities in the middle of our communities here in Concord and across America. It's no different here than it is anywhere else. One of the most important precedents that were set was the Olmsted decision, which mandates that people with disabilities need to live in communities alongside people without disabilities. The housing needs for adults with significant disabilities is the single most severe population in crisis in the state's housing crisis. Parents who are aging and have their adult children with disabilities living at home are panicked because they are going to die, and their adults with significant disabilities not only don't have the workforce it takes to make sure that they have robust community-based lives where they have jobs, are volunteering, attend political committee meetings, come to city council meetings. They also don't have a place to live. And I understand that next step living comes from a place of incredibly powerfully good intentions, and from parents who are super motivated to fix what is going to be their child's future when they are gone. And I respect that the parents who've put this project together have worked tirelessly to make sure that their loved ones will have a home. But it is very important that Concord City councilors understand that in our desperation as parents to have housing in place, we are headed in the direction of congregate housing, separate housing, a house for those people over there. And inadvertently, and with the best of intentions and enormous, literally house-building love in their hearts, these parents have put this project together, and I applaud them because we've got to do something, because city and state governments are not doing enough. But I will point out that when a bullet point reads weekly charts detailing resident responsibilities is on the front page of their website, this is in fact out of best practice and in fact a violation. You cannot have people on a published schedule open to anyone who comes to the house to see, and you can't have everyone in a home on a schedule. It's just been established that that is contrary to people having choice and self-determination. So I am grateful that there are parents who are passionately moved to put together housing projects. But I implore the city of Concord to ensure that moving forward, when affordable housing projects are coming up, that you establish a minimum dedicated percentage of those new units to be dedicated to people with disabilities and their support staff. And I would be happy to support the city of Concord moving in that direction.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Bowe?
I have a question.
Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for your testimony. I just want to educate myself a little bit because I don't know a lot about the Homestead Act, but I think I recall that it came from a time, the 50s and 60s, when folks were institutionalized.
It's actually a much more recent decision than that. It's post-1990.
But that's its origin was the institutionalization
moving
of people.
Yes, so we move people from Olmsted said no, people in institutions, people have a right to a home in their community. And we have this challenge, and this is really nuanced, right? Because it's all gradual steps. And so there's a gray area, but group homes, as it turns out, are mini institutions. And what the research indicates is that when you have 6, 8, or 10 folks living in a appropriate setting, a group home, you have much higher risk for abuse and neglect on the part of staff.
So as a follow-up,
Follow-up.
thank you, Your Honor. So what do you do with an individual whose parents are aging out, who don't have the ability to take care of them indefinitely, and they're fairly independent, but not quite independent to live on their own? Where do they go?
Yeah, you make sure that all of the affordable housing projects that the city builds, or workforce housing that the city provides, that the city approves, you make sure that there is a dedicated amount of space for people with and without disabilities. You can live with support in an affordable housing project. You don't have to have a dedicated building separate.
Follow-up.
Thank you, Your Honor. So you would suggest that they live as an individual with support. Is that the case?
There are many paths to home, and I would be happy to host a 1 or 2 hour information session for city councilors on the many paths to home. But yes, people with disabilities can live alongside people without disabilities with support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Brown.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out and identifying that bullet point. And I'm wondering, is there a way or an organization or individual that could look through their plans and identify and say, oh yes, that is illegal or that is contrary to best practices? Is there someone or some organization that does that we could require happens before this is processed through the city?
Yes, there are a number of organizations and professionals who are available to do that consultation, yes. And, yep.
Follow-up, Your Honor?
Follow-up.
This is for the city manager. Could we contract to have an individual or an organization such as Ms. Bodwin has just mentioned review their current policies before this is conditional to this being approved?
You can do a lot of things, but it's not necessarily a good idea.
I'm not trying to suggest you.
I think there's people here who can answer questions here, but this is one of the most innovative things that are being done in the state of New Hampshire to help people with disabilities, right? To get housing for people, to get housing for folks in an urban atmosphere where they can actually get services at the same time, and to try to, push that aside, I think is wrong. I think this is wrong, and I'd like to hear from the people who are behind this project that the city council has worked for many years with to make this project happen. Let's do the right thing and let them testify.
A point of clarification, I am not suggesting that the city not fund this project. I prefaced my concerns with the suggestion that city councilors and any elected officials not adopt the idea that people with disabilities ought to be living in their own separate buildings, all grouped together. There are many ways to provide supportive living and supportive services within living where people are not congregated together. And I mean no disrespect to this project. Families are deeply concerned, and they are working hard to come up with solutions in the face of municipalities and state governments not doing their fair share in addressing the needs of the disability community.
Thank you. Any other questions?
May I follow up?
Councilor Brown.
Yes, I don't mean to say that I would not support this. I'm just, as we have new information, I would just like another set of eyes who may say, hey, yeah, we don't have to, we can remove weekly job responsibility chart list. I think you coming forward, I really appreciate your testimony, educating us on this, and I would love to have a presentation by you about the many paths to home. I think that would be really helpful. I would just love to see that if, we are supporting this, that we are also supporting best practices, and I don't think it would hurt to have somebody to review that with people.
Mr. City Manager, is it fair to say that there are people connected with this project who are hearing this testimony?
Yes, I would say that's true, and we can put
So they'll have
testimony in direct contact with them, and that would be the best way to do this, instead of trying to delay a very important grant that the city has been working on for many, many years to try to make this project happen, and to delay that and jeopardize this project, I think is wrong.
That was my impression. Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Ron. Just one last question for you. I really appreciate your insight and your expertise in the area. But would you agree with me that your argument probably belongs across the street at the state to get adequate funding at the state level instead of getting in the way of this wonderful local project?
I don't think one precludes the other. I think it's both and.
Great. Councilor Schultz.
And I'll just add to that, as also a state representative, she's well known at the State House. And I just want to clarify, you're not making a judgment either way about the existence of this. If I heard you correctly, the biggest complaint was about the website, the listing of the rules?
My concern.
And one follow-up.
Sure.
My concern is that one bullet point is indicative of an approach that is headed is as a matter of philosophy, is headed in the wrong direction. In my professional opinion, that is in no way, my comments are in no way meant to harm the funding of this project or to call into question the integrity, the honor, the love, and the very hard work that has gone into making this project happen.
Follow up.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make this suggestion, I guess I could say this later, but that this is this would be considered an issue in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, separate from our decision today, our decisions that we will be making on this specific item, that maybe this could be a discussion that could be sent to the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, and maybe we could invite, if there isn't already an expert in this area on that committee.
There is.
Okay, good. So, thank you.
Very deliberately. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for testifying.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll close the hearing, the public hearing on item 35B. Madam City Clerk, item 35C.
It is a resolution appropriating the sum of $21,499 for law enforcement-related programs and accepting the sum of $21,499 in unmatched grant funds from the United States Department of Justice grant program for this purpose.
Mr. City Manager.
Honored members of the council, as with prior years, there is no match required for this grant. However, we will again enter into an MOU with the County of Merrimack for programming and allotment of funds. On this agreement, the police department will receive $16,499, and the County of Merrimack will receive $5,000.
Thank you. Any questions for the City Manager? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing on item 35C. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify on this item? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing on item 35C closed. That moves us to item 35D. Madam City Clerk.
It is a resolution accepting the terms of a federal fiscal year 2024 Homeland Security Grant Program, grant issued by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency, appropriating the sum of $259,062 for the purchase of a modular vehicle barrier system, and accepting the sum of $259,062 from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency for this purpose.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Honored members of the council, I asked Chief Chisholm to come forward and present as best he can.
Excuse me. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Councilors, Mr. City Manager. I apologize. I don't know how long my voice is going to last tonight. What is in front of you today is an effort that started probably 2 years ago, where the fire marshal was who I heard it first from. It approached me if we had interest in sponsoring a traffic barrier system. This type of system is designed to protect against exactly what we saw right around New Year's in the city of New Orleans, where vehicles were, in that case, purposely used to ram crowds of people in closed roadways. This is an instance that is happening throughout the world with increasing frequency. This could be done with an intent to harm. This could be also a split-second decision, or this could be something that could happen from an incapacitated driver. But either way, these types of events are occurring more frequently. About a year ago, we applied for a grant, and we received that grant. And what is in front of you today is would allow us to get 2 trailers worth of these modular traffic barriers, and that would give us pretty much just enough to bookend North Main Street to close the main throughway, the events that we closed that part of the city with. We are well aware that that is not a complete system and that would not completely protect, but we don't want to let a great start suffer because we don't have a complete system. These modular vehicle traffic barriers are trailer mounted, so they're stored remotely. They weigh just about 50 pounds each, and a couple of people can deploy them within a few hours. It does take some effort to deploy them, but based on the cost and the mobility, this is the system that was chosen. There should also be a draft policy about the usage that's been included in the packet. And if you have any questions, I guess I would entertain those, unless if there's any other information. I apologize.
That's all right.
Do you need a lozenge?
No, I think this is good.
I was going to offer some as well.
Councilor McNamara.
I just want to thank the efforts that went into putting this grant together, because I appreciate the efforts that have been put for this grant, to receive this grant to bookend the Main Street, and was fortunate enough to see how this works at one of the events downtown. And I appreciate also that it is so easy to bring to an event. You can rent it out. I think it's a huge safety issue that will make people feel safe, and will continue to bring more people down to events. And the fact that it's mobile and that we can rent it out. Somebody else may want to use it, and they may feel this is a good thing for our community. So thank you to all the efforts that were put into this.
Councilor Brown.
Yes, I'm just wondering what is the lifespan of something like this? Is this something where once a car tries to get through it and is stopped, that's the end of it? Do we know anything?
These are this section right there. There are many of them that are strung across, but the section that the car impacted would be damaged beyond repair. The way that they are designed is they trap the car and they force the car down into the ground, and in doing so, it does destroy that section of I'll call it the barrier, so that would need to be replaced.
Thank you.
With a significant impact. If somebody bumped into it accidentally, it would be durable enough.
Other questions for the chief? Oh.
Let him go.
Yeah, I know. That's the way I feel. Thank you, chief. Thanks very much.
I appreciate that.
Sugar-free.
Yeah. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this item? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none? declare the public hearing on item 35D closed. That moves us to the public hearing action section of our meeting. Madam City Clerk, item 36.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title V Administrative Code, Chapter 35, Classification and Compensation Plan for the Wastewater Maintenance Manager.
Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Madam City Clerk, item 37.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $35,000 for reimbursement of demolition costs associated with the Next Step Living project at 3 North State Street and accepting the sum of $35,000 in grant proceeds from the New Hampshire Department of Business and Economic Affairs Municipal Demolition Grant Program for this purpose.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Council Kretovic.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll recuse myself. I have a conflict of interest with the primary stakeholder. We serve on a New Hampshire Advisory Board together.
Thank you very much. Council Brown.
Yes, I am in support of this. I would like, as Ms. Bodwin had offered, to give us a presentation about the many paths to home. I would like to see that in the future available to the council.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Any other comments or questions? All right, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it by the required two-thirds majority. Madam City Clerk, item 38.
It is a resolution appropriating the sum of $21,499 for law enforcement-related programs and accepting the sum of $21,499 in unmatched grant funds from the United States Department of Justice grant program for this purpose.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Council Brown.
Your Honor, I am recusing myself as my husband is a Concord police officer.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it by the required two-thirds majority. Madam City Clerk, item 39.
It's a resolution accepting the terms of a federal fiscal year 2024 Homeland Security Grant Program grant issued by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency, appropriating the sum of $259,062 for the purchase of a modular vehicle barrier system and accepting the sum of $259,062 from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency for this purpose.
Thank you.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Council Kretovic.
Thank you, Your Honor. My appreciation to the chief, the Public Safety Board, under Councilor Grady Sexton. This is something a long time coming. When we had this presentation a couple of years ago, I think everyone at the council table really wanted to support this. It was, can we find the money to make this happen? We had a very impassioned testimony by someone that had been at an event in another city, in another state, and was begging us to please, please protect our community. So the fact that this is actually coming to fruition in such a timely manner when we know that there is so much unrest out in the world right now, this is exactly what our city of Concord needs so that we can continue to thrive and not divide in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Brown.
Yes, thank you. And actually echoing Councilor Kretovic's comments, I was here when the individual testified, and also I want to point out that the council, or there was a councilor who wanted to fund it in the budget, and I'm not sure which staff member said, hold on, I think we can find grant dollars. So it might have been the city manager who had said, I'm pretty sure that we can find, or it might have been someone, a staff member.
John
maybe
did all
chief,
the work, so I
chief
give it to
who
John.
recognized that we could find grant dollars because this is almost $300,000 that is not coming from taxpayers. So thank you for saving safety and saving our wallets. Thank you very much.
Councilor Fennessy.
I was going to say, if memory serves, Councilor Bouchard, former Councilor Bouchard, was the one who was really pushing us on this a few years ago. So I want to thank her for, making this a priority a few years ago. It took a little bit, but I'm glad we're doing it in the fashion that we're doing it.
Any other comments? Let me add my voice to the chorus and say that I think this is a very timely acquisition. I agree, it's great that we managed to use federal funds to purchase this. I think that we do, in fact, live in very uncertain times. And we need to do the best we can within our means to protect our people. And this is just one more step. We are becoming a city of festivals, so I think this is a very wise and a very timely acquisition. All right, saying that, I'll put the, yes,
I'm sorry, one more follow-up.
sure.
There is a policy that is that is attached to this. As in approving this, are we also approving the policy as drafted?
No, we're not approving the policy. Are we? Is this a policy too, Mr. City Manager?
If you want to have a council-approved policy, you could. This is simply developed by staff working with the Public Safety Advisory Committee as a sounding board. This is what we're thinking of the way it works. Because you got to remember there's costs associated with the deployment, and really this is just phase one of what, John, 2 or 3 more phases that need to have three more phases. Each phase will probably cost you another $250,000. So we're trying to set this up right at the beginning. So I think if you're okay with the draft policy, which we are, staff is and Public Safety Advisory is, then that's what we'd use going forward.
Follow-up, Your Honor?
Follow-up.
I'd like to ask the Public Safety Chair, how do you feel about this policy? Do you feel that now would be a good time to approve this policy at the same time as we?
Thank you, Counselor. I think I understand the question. So the Public Safety Advisory Board thoroughly vetted the project and the policy as well, and I think that we were all in full support and very grateful for the Chief's work on the project.
Your Honor, may I make an amendment that we approve this policy at the same time as we accept this grant?
Is that required? Councilor Shalsa.
Could I ask Councilor Brown, I would say that we not approve this policy and give, because policies can be changed, refined, as it's put into practice, they could learn that it could be improved, they could be refined. I think we want to give staff the ability to refine the policies without coming back to City Council. So we did review the policy in the Public Safety Board. I think it's a great first step. As we know now, it's a great policy, but I don't want to tie their hands and have them come back to City Council if that's what that would mean.
Mr. City Manager.
So how about a compromise, which would be if we're going to change anything to do with the fee system, we'd come back before the City Council like we do with all fees and say we need to do something with the fees, or this isn't working, or this is working, if, on an annual basis if we needed to, and then that way you'd be aware and the community be aware of how that works. Because I wouldn't want staff to be coming up with fees on our own type of thing. It's something that the City Council should. And everything else, as far as the operations of it.
Yeah.
Okay, does that work?
Yeah. Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you.
And Councilor Keach.
Thank you.
My assumption is that if there was a significant change to the policy, you'd bring it to the Public Safety Board anyway, so I'm fine with that.
Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is for Councilor Brown. It would help me think through this if I knew what your objection was specifically.
No, because I don't think that approving, it wasn't clear that approving this approves the policy as well.
The policy says draft on it, if
Right.
you look, right? So, because we didn't want to be too presumptive. Yep.
So I am saying that we should approve the draft as written, and as the city manager said, a compromise that if there are changes regarding the fees, it would come back to us. That way, we at least have a policy in place.
Right, I understand. Thank you.
Sure.
Do we need that amendment? I'm sorry.
I don't know that we need the amendment. I think that the record's going to be clear.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, would that action and an amendment expedite the process in any way, or is it?
I think if you accept the report after the public hearing, people have had an opportunity to comment, and again, there'll be other opportunities to make changes as we go along, and we'll come back as often as we need to make sure it's flexible. So I think we'll learn over the next several years how best to implement this and as changes go on. And again, it's only 1/4 of the system that we really need to, particularly for downtown, so it's going to continue to evolve over the next 4 or 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
All right, ready for the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it with the required 2/3 majority. I'll note that the report from the Steering Committee for Concord's Plan to End Homelessness has been pushed back to March. That brings us to items pulled from the consent agenda. The first one is item 15. Madam City Clerk.
Yes, it was pulled from the consent agenda by Councilor Brown. It is the quarterly status report from the city manager on City Council 2024-2025 priorities.
Thank you. Councilor Brown, do you want to speak to pulling it off?
Yes, I do. And I just want to clarify that I pulled these so that I could discuss them briefly. I just want to point out in the quarterly status report, our first goal is balancing the budget and minimizing the tax rate impact. This is something that I'm hearing over and over again from residents, how important that is, and I want to thank staff for what they're doing towards this. I think it's item F under the first goal is pursue federal and state funding, and there are 19 grants that have been applied for or received to save us money, and and a lot of that, over 300,000, we have approved here tonight. So I just think that's fantastic, and that some of the grants we have received them, but particularly the Land Water Conservation Fund grants, I believe all of them require a 50-50 match. The one, I think it's 18 for the skateboard park. That was with the understanding that we would not construct that until that match, those dollars were in hand. So, I just appreciate that what staff is doing, and though we have received these grants, we still are waiting until we receive those donations to move forward. So, and that is all. I wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept the report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Madam City Clerk, item 17.
This is the December 31st, 2024 fiscal year-to-date financial statements together with a report from the Deputy City Manager, and it was pulled from consent by Councilor Brown.
Thank you. Councilor Brown, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, I do want to speak, and I want to draw folks' attention to page number 38. This is the Golf Fund Budget Performance Report. At the start of the report, it says that things are looking great, but when we look at page 38 of the Golf Fund Budget Performance Report, and you look at the current month transactions, the revenue is only $27,000, and whereas the next two pages, page number 40, the expenses are $105,000. You can go back and you can see that we have full-time, part-time, temporary, and overtime that we're paying for a seasonal sport. So this is something that I think it's really important as we are looking at our funds and budgeting and recreation, that if this is a seasonal sport that is regularly, and I requested and we received the last 5 years of the golf fund budget, that it runs a deficit during the off-season months. And that is true for the last 5 years, and this is no exception. So that is just something that I want to point out.
Thank you, Councilor.
And I make a motion that we accept the report.
Okay. Is that seconded?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Madam City Clerk, item 23.
It is a report from the Parks and Recreation Director on department operations in 2024, pulled from consent by Councilor Brown.
Thank you. Councilor Brown, would you like to speak to?
Yes, and of course, and I want to highlight how important our parks are to our residents. The first page, the note from the director: our parks and facilities are vital to enhancing the vibrancy of our city. They serve as essential spaces for community building, and I feel that we need that more than ever, opportunities for us to come together, to connect with each other. And I was so impressed, the page number 4, just all that Parks and Rec covers, and what they do and how they service. There are 500 volunteers, donations, trust fund, year-round, serving our community, birth to death, cemeteries. You can rent facilities. There are 5 community centers. There are, but I would like to note that there are no restaurants in these community centers. They're not staffed by pros. There are no basketball pros or tennis pros or lifeguards year-round, and they don't serve alcohol at any of these community centers. So that is something that I wanted to point out. And thank you very much, Parks and Rec, for clearing the ice. We didn't get to skate at all last year. And now all our rinks are open, and black ice was fantastic. And I believe the groomer has been in use by Parks and Rec, has been out grooming. And that was great, although I would make one request that at Beaver Meadow there was a young family and the children were very upset. They said, it's not fun here. I think there are some great sledding hills at the golf course, and I would love to see a sled library. I think it's called a sled library, which is what's at White Park, where there are free sleds, kind of in a bin, available for anyone to use. And I think that would be really fun for young kids and families to enjoy parks and family time if they don't have Nordic skis or golf clubs.
They're probably concerned that there was no hot chocolate, Counselor.
There is.
Good.
You can. I went in and had a hot drink.
Good.
And if, I make a motion to accept this report.
Thank you. Second. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Mr. City Manager.
I'd just like to add, as you can see on page, I think it was a great little project, special project, on page 9, Mr. Gill, working with the area residents in the neighborhood there, put together the Eastman Clock Tower Restoration Project.
Yes.
What a special thing that is, and you can just the picture is just absolutely beautiful. So just wanted to thank David for great work out there. So and the neighborhood and all the neighbors.
Yeah.
So
And I also would like to add that there was a resident who donated over $2,000 towards that clock. So donations from the community, you make it easy for people to contribute to our park. So thank you to, I believe it was the Millers.
All right. Are we ready for the vote? Councilor Fennessy.
I just want to take the opportunity right now. I know that Parks and Rec put in a significant amount of time this weekend with pond hockey and also the ski
The Beeve.
day to ski at the Beeve.
Ski the Beeve.
Ski the
Learn
Beeve.
to
Sorry.
ski.
So
Sorry, sir.
this is a great opportunity. Thank you once again. And I can say that I actually saw Mr. Gill at about 7:30 at White Park on Saturday night. So people were putting in a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Madam City Clerk, item 33.
It is city manager's appointments to the Conservation Commission, pulled from consent by Councilor Brown.
Councilor Brown, would you like to speak to your...
Yes, I would like to speak that these appointments did not come with any resumes, and some of them, I know these were renewals, but I think it is really important because we want to encourage new voices. We want to encourage new people to participate on our committees, that we should have resumes whenever there are renewals. And I am opposed to Mark Cohen being on the Conservation Commission.
Councilor, we have a process, which is you saw these nominees last month, and if you had objections to a member, that is the time to bring it forward. That's the reason that we give you the resumes for candidates for committees a month in advance. So if you have any concerns, you can raise them with me or the city manager. In this case, it's the city manager's appointee, not bring it forward in a public meeting.
Well, there are no resumes, Your Honor, that were attached to this.
Well, you could have brought that forward to that concern to us, either of us, last month when you first saw this. I'm just saying, that's why we have the process.
The city manager.
Mr. City
I just want to say, you've never in the past, but again, I've only been here 26 years, said that you wanted to see resumes for reappointments. So if that's something new, I'd ask you to take a vote and do that, because that would require all the people on your 54 committees plus six, with six, to submit brand-new updated resumes every single time we wanted to do this, so. To create a lot of work for the city clerk, but.
Councilor Kretovic.
Thanks, Your Honor. I happen to note, I was going through multiple committees, that there is actually 4 vacancies that are on this committee for alternates, and so if you want to conserve in the city of Concord, now's a good time to put in a request. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Horn.
I don't have an issue with any of these particular members. I would just ask either of you, when you're doing the reappointments when someone's term is up, do you look at pending applications for that committee and then deem, you know, this particular person's is still who we want there for that
I can speak for
position?
myself and say I would, yeah.
I do, yes. And I interview in person each person that I recommend.
And I
For reappointment as well?
No, it's not for reappointment, because I talk to them during the year.
Right. I would just implore you to, obviously, this is close to my heart because I'm when trying to redo the appointment process slightly. If, when reappointments come up, perhaps if there's someone that's on multiple committees, but you have somebody else that might be new in the community, that we could make it more diverse and allow a certain person that is already on a couple of committees, but you have an opportunity to put somebody else new from the community on, just to be looking at that type of thing.
Yes, sir.
So under city appointments for Library Board of Trustees, Jeannie West and Stephanie Samarter, brand new appointments who have never been on a committee before. So I agree with you 100%.
No, I wasn't like I said, I have nothing against these. I was just clarifying for myself.
And I agree 100%, and that's exactly what I do.
Councilor Brown.
Yes, and I appreciate your comment that the time to speak to this would have been last month. I don't think that's written anywhere, that it says that is when we raise our objections. If you can point to that to me, I would appreciate that, because I have not seen anything that says that. So in light of that, I would like to delay this by 1 month so that I may share my concerns with you.
Councilor.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second. Okay. All right, any further discussion? Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. If we want to get more people to participate in committees, I think it's really important that once their name is out there and people are comfortable with them, that we vote to approve them. If we're going to have a fight about every single appointment, guess what? We're going to have less people who are going to apply. If there's going to be a public hearing where people are going to debate the merits of whether or not they should participate on committee. So from my perspective, I think the way to do it is, if you have an issue, once the names are posted, go to the city manager if it's the city manager who's appointing them, or go to the mayor if it's the mayor who's appointing them, and point out, you know, issues you have. Because I don't think you're going to encourage participation if we're going to debate in public about whether or not we want a particular individual on a committee.
Thank you. Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would agree with Councilor Fennessy. I mean, I look at these 3 names, and these are folks that have volunteered hundreds of hours over the years and highly qualified. My second point to Councilor Brown is, no offense, but you have a style of ambushing at the last minute. And if you, just my opinion, but if you want to be productive, I would raise concerns, you know, weeks before the meeting, not the night of the meeting, because it's ineffective.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kurtz.
Yes, thank you. Just to clarify for folks who might not be familiar with the process, we are given, council members are given potential appointments the month before, and it is not public for the exact reason that Councilor Fennessy was saying, so that there is an opportunity for councilors to raise concerns in private without causing any potential embarrassment for an individual who has come forward to volunteer. And I agree that that's a very important boundary to maintain, because we do have so many vacancies on our boards and committees. And just shouting out Councilor Horn and our wonderful city clerk, who have made all of those available online. So if you're at home thinking maybe you want to get involved, please take a look at the vacancies and trust that it will be a welcoming process, and you'll have an opportunity to submit your resume if you are new. And we take very seriously those of you willing to serve on our committees.
Okay. Councilor Brown.
Yes, so I agree that it should
be clear, and it should be clear not just for the public, but for counselors as well. Because when these names do become public, that is when I hear, and I'm sure other people will hear complaints about some of these names. So others may not be aware that these names were raised for appointment until much later, because it is for council view only. So it would be very helpful to make it clear. Is it written somewhere that says that any concerns need to be brought up the 30 days before?
I think every counselor at this table has, during orientation, has been told that that's the process.
I'm not, that is, I would like that to be in writing for the future. I think that would be helpful. I believe the motion, I had made the motion initially that we delay this by 1 month.
But there
was no
second,
motion.
and now we have a motion on the table to approve.
That was not a motion.
Yeah.
It was a recommendation. I'm sorry. I have
There
a
was
hand
no,
up for another purpose.
even if it was a motion, there was no second, and there was, a motion is on the table.
I make a motion to amend that we delay this by 1 month.
There being no second, Councilor Todd.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this point, I just feel obligated to say that I know these three individuals, and I have not heard anyone in the public ever complain about them. And in fact, I feel exactly the opposite. I've served with all of them directly in one capacity or another. At one point, I was the council representative to the Conservation Commission, and I know just on that level that these individuals bring a high degree of expertise to the subject matter at hand. These are exactly the kinds of people that you want to have volunteering in these kinds of positions, because they have the background and the knowledge to provide adequate information and dispensation of issues that come before that relate to conservation in the city. So I just want to thank all three of these individuals on record right now for their service. Thank you.
Are we ready for the vote?
Excuse me, Your Honor. I would just like to say, I also served on the Conservation Commission with these three individuals, and I can attest that Mr. Chorman, Ms. Healy have those credentials, but we know that because we served with them. Those people that are new to the council, anyone who is looking at these appointments on the agenda, are not aware of that. So I think, considering that it's a 3-year term, I don't think it's a lot to ask them to resubmit a resume if nothing's changed. I think that's something that is not unreasonable to be transparent for the community.
Okay. Councilor Kratovic.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't mean to delay the conversation further. My intent of saying that there are alternates available as vacancies for this board being the Conservation Commission has very specific state laws that it needs to follow, and it is a learning curve to get there. That's why I support these candidates returning to the board, and wanted to also highlight there is opportunity for others to come to the table to learn and really be an active member of our community, especially when it comes to conservation, which is so important to our quality of life. Thank you.
Are we ready for the vote? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
No.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Now we have come to comments by the City Council, and we'll go around this way, starting with Councilor Foote.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. A couple of things. I want to echo what Councilor Fennessy said. I have family members who attended both Ski the Beeve and Black Ice, both hugely successful. Thanks to everybody that made that happen. Great events, really showcased the city. And then secondly, received a number of inquiries relative to recreation opportunities, golf, arena, etc. And I know that staff has put together a list of the cost for each one of them. Is that possible to post for your manager's weekly update to show folks what we're spending on the arena, golf, the bus service, the pools, how to break it down for a $350,000 house or whatever the mechanism is, to show people what we're spending and how their tax dollars are being utilized for recreation, what the bottom line is?
We could do it.
Yes.
We could do it for that, or I could do it as part of the budget presentation. Or
sure.
However you like. I'm trying to think about the greatest exposure for that, because the budget presentation obviously is on the website. It's out there earlier, as are the newsletters,
I
but.
just looked through,
Yeah.
what you prepared, and it was, 68 pages. I don't think the average person goes through that in the budget.
Exactly, yeah,
And if people could just see it in a summarized version,
We'll take a look at it.
I think it would be
Would you mind if
helpful.
I contact you and say, what do you think, does this?
No rush, just a suggestion.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Councilor Schultz?
I'll just point out something that Councilor Horn pointed out to me, and that is that Ward 9 needs a representative on the RPAC. I get and I don't exactly remember all of the acronyms for things, but I hope that we can find someone for that.
Counselor, why don't you and I work on that together?
I would love to.
Okay. That's the Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee.
Thank you.
So we're looking for a candidate who has to live in Ward 9.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Good night. I'm good. It's been said already tonight, but the snow removal has been excellent. As many of you know, I live on Hills Ave. So at 3 or 4 in the morning when I hear the backup horns going or beeping, I'm actually not irritated. It's music to my ears. It puts me back to sleep. I know that I'm not going to get any calls in the morning because things are cleared. And lo and behold, when I leave at 6:30, it is spotless. So it's not just a lot of fluff, but it's really done in a way that many other communities don't see. I work in another community, and it's night and day.
It goes past my house at usually midnight or 2.
I have it all night long because bobcats zip up Hills Ave. That's their main route.
Amanda, did you?
I don't, thank you.
Judith?
No, thank you.
Stacy?
Yes, I would like to draw folks' attention to information number 26. It's FPAC minutes. I want to talk about this because in the minutes, the committee approved option 3 for the clubhouse. And I have 3 things that I want to point out. That the funding, the tax rate impact that they were presented with was not realistic. It assumed receipt of a $500,000 land water conservation fund grant that has not been applied for, and it assumed $250,000 in donations that have not been collected, and there's no mechanism for that. And the tax rate was based on receiving $750 in donations and grants. So that I felt was unrealistic. There was no public comment available at any of the 3 committees. At the ad hoc building committee, the public comment was available after the decision had been made. The golf advisory committee, which is mostly Beaver Meadow members, and at the fiscal policy advisory committee, there was no public comment before the vote was taken.
Counselor, how many members of the public were at that meeting?
There were at least 2. There were at least 2.
I don't think there were
At
any.
the fiscal policy advisory committee.
There were all staff, and that you were there, Counselor, and you
Okay,
didn't
I
put
was
up
there.
your hand. I know.
It wasn't even on the agenda. It was not even on the agenda, Your Honor.
Counselor, there was nobody there to testify.
I was ready to testify, Your Honor, as a member of the public.
You should have put up, why did you not put up your hand?
Your Honor, there is an agenda that lists public comment, so I would say that's on the chair. There was no public comment. And also, during that presentation, it was the golf was compared to the library and Parks and Rec, which the library and Parks and Rec both have trust funds, they have volunteers, and they serve a much broader swath of our community than the golf course. So I believe that there should be public hearings for the clubhouse before it gets to budget. During the Fiscal Policy Advisory Committee, the comment was that this would be rolled into budget. I think that is a mistake. In December of 2023, we had hours of testimony. We received pages. You yourself told the Ad Hoc Building Committee in January of last year that there would be lots of public outreach. There has not been an opportunity for the public to come and speak to this. So I really believe that we need to present this to the public, not just the the folks who play golf, but to everyone to present, to comment on this, well before budget.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Bredovic?
Does anybody want to add comment to that?
Counselor Bredovic? This is personal comment. Councilor Schultz?
I will just say there was, at one of the golf meetings, a member of my constituency of Ward 9 that was there that did, I don't know if she had wanted to speak, but she, I know that she didn't. I don't know either way, but I think that just for whatever it's worth.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I did want to draw attention to our conversation that we were having about our police and fire that was noted in our report and the severe fatigue that they are having right now with the overtime, with the shortage of staff. When Mr. Chesley was up here and he was talking about our plow drivers, and he was talking about, we're kind of making a joke about they're driving the plows and then they're getting out, maybe having a cup of coffee, a little bit of a nap, and going and cleaning our sidewalks for us around our schools. I mean, those things are all well and good, but we have shortages all across the city. In one of the reports, it did talk about the fact that one of the reasons we got the Housing Championship award was because we're a complete streets community. When we first applied for that, this would have been 2007, 2008. I know Councilor Todd and I were on Transportation Policy Advisory Committee together, and it was our first effort putting together this policy. And one of the things that we did was really encouraged our neighbors to check on the elderly, take care of the end of their driveway, take your snow blower, clear the sidewalk, clear the fire hydrants, help out our fire, help out our general services, and help out your neighbors. That is the least we can do so that when the the sidewalk plow goes by, that they're not stuck because someone didn't get a chance to plow out the end of their road or the end of their driveway, that they're not stuck trying to make their way around a corner because there's a fire hydrant there. We can do a lot to help each other, and I know that the snow is different, but we're looking at 3 more potential storms. I think that we can all be courteous to each other. Please be responsible, help each other, help our police, our fire, and our general services. That's my soapbox. Thank you.
I would like to remind our Pennacook folks that the Merrimack Valley School District annual meeting is Thursday, March 6th at 7 p.m. at the high school. You can go, I believe, starting at 11 to vote for your school board members. And then if you go to the meeting at 7, you would be able to vote on the budget and a few warrants that are there. But so I would please beg everyone to show up, vote for your school board members and your budget.
Yeah, thank you. Just to pick up on Councilor Kretovik's comments, I have 2 words for Councilor Kretovic: snow angels.
Yes, snow angels, you're right.
Which was her idea, actually, and it was, as she described, a way to help community members help each other during these events. And I think that I would just also like to point out that in addition to that, and the comments made by Councilor Keach earlier, these are not easy jobs that these general services personnel have. If any of you have watched the sidewalk snowplow removal machine at work, I can't, if I had to be in that machine, I'd probably lose my mind in about 5 minutes. I can't imagine the amount of concentration it takes to be able to stay focused when you're going at that slow a level of speed and still to be able to control the vehicle in a proper way so that you can just stay on the sidewalk and the path that you need to, because some of these sidewalks are not wide. You've got a very narrow path to cut. And that's just one aspect of it. All of those jobs are very difficult. So when we talk about how difficult it is to find people to recruit for them, first of all, it is a challenging position. And second of all, a lot of times the scheduling is very challenging. So I just want to reiterate what's already been said and just a big thank you to all the people on the crew. I would hope that at some point what would be nice would be suggestion for Mr. Chesley and Ms. Zolchek to perhaps do a special feature in the Concord General Services Gazette on the personnel themselves so that we can kind of highlight them and the great work that they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor.
May I thought of something.
All right.
Okay, thank you. I'll be brief. I just wanted to acknowledge that February is Black History Month, and that I know the Concord Public Library has highlighted some of the materials they have available. So take a moment this month to learn some history celebrate some of the great contributions to our community. And yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you. I've already mentioned our winter snowplow drivers, and thank you to others for recognizing the work that they're doing during this unusually snowy winter, but normally like snowy winter. I also wanted to mention a shout out for the Black Ice hockey team crew. I stopped up to White Park. It was great to see Black Ice pond hockey back at White Park. There was a lot of energy. I think they had 95 teams on 5 rinks, and real down-to-earth type of activity. I stopped up there Friday evening after I left City Hall, heard the sound of the loudspeakers and went up, and I saw Chris Brown, who is one of the driving forces of the pond hockey tournament, in his bib overalls, dragging a trash can around. And I thought, this is what Concord is all about. Here's somebody who really puts the sweat equity in to something that's important to him. And then I also saw Jim DeRamus, who's not a Concord resident, but who is the longtime president of the Greater Concord YMCA. He's on the board. He was in his snowmobile suit out on the ice working on it. And that's really what this community is all about. So it was a great event. I was so happy to see that they picked the right weekend for one year. Although they had to, I believe that they played until 9:30 Saturday night, so they wouldn't have to be on the ice on Sunday when they had all the snow. So it all worked out for them, and congratulations to them. I also wanted to mention that I have appointed to the joint Memorial Field Planning Committee with the school board designees, Councilors Fennessy and Councilor Foote, and that was in alphabetical order. So I want to thank Councilor Fennessy and Councilor Foote for being willing to work on that committee. They'll be working with the school board designees, who I believe are board member Higgins and board member Richards, on bringing forward a plan for what needs to be done at Memorial Field. So thank you for that. I also wanted to mention that on the March agenda, there will be a report from city staff on the recommendations of the 3 committees that have looked at the Beaver Meadow facility. The staff will be reporting on that to us and presenting us with all the information that these committees have seen and on what their recommendations were. So I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Congratulations, you're out before 9 o'clock.